All right, welcome to the first of its kind, world-changing manufacturers network. Lisa Ryan has her ears to the ground and her heart in the game. Get ongoing education and new connections right here with Lisa and the Manufacturers Network. Buckle your seat, listen, and spread the word. Here's Lisa.
Hey, it's Lisa Ryan. Welcome to the Manufacturers Network podcast. Excited to introduce our guest today, John Kevin Koehler. John is from KK Tool Company with over 11 years of experience in production, quality control, and logistics. Specializing in advanced machinery like CNC and 3D milling, he's passionate about using his engineering expertise to solve complex challenges and drive growth in the manufacturing industry. So, John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
So share with us a little bit about your background and what led you to doing what you do with KK Tool.
Yeah, so KK Tool is actually a family business started by my dad and grandfather in the early 70s. My dad and my grandfather both worked for their brother, my grandfather's brother, Irby, and just through some encouragement, started doing their own thing in the back of his shop. And that led me into growing up around it from a very young age and, going in, smelling the shop of my dad and that kind of thing, and kind of having a general interest of what was going on very early on. There was a lot of overtime and a lot of working, and sometimes I'd be sitting in the cafeteria where I am now as a little kid trying to figure out what the heck was going on out there. And as someone who is more inclined to learn by doing and things like that, manufacturing attracted me to it. And I did go to college. I have a computer science background. I went to Indiana and I competed on the men's swim team there. Through high school and things like that, I worked here and I got pulled away from it, but always enjoyed being around it. And in the back of my mind was always what I wanted to do, and came back. And my dad's siblings are also part of the company, and they've all welcomed me in, and I don't know. They've let me just work my way through and figure things out. And I really get an enjoyment of kind of getting the opportunity to do a lot of different things, from 3D machining to we develop our own management system internally and doing that, dealing with customers, supply chain, and really getting an idea of what's involved with running a small family-owned manufacturing company, if you will.
So with a lot of times with companies that are started by fathers and grandfathers, and then the kid comes in the business who sees things different ways as far as technology and how the world works and wanting to change things, how has it been as far as bringing in some new ideas and changing the way that you're doing business in today's ever-changing technology world?
Right. Yeah, I think the pace of change is definitely faster than they've been used to in the past, although you want to be able to control that change. Slow and steady growth is what's helped them be successful and keep it managed. I always jokingly say I'm trying to pull them into the 20th century at least, adopting different things, but they've done a lot of things early on too. We're probably one of the few shops that have developed our own management system very early on. We call it On Track. There's paperless parts. There's a lot of other kind of Job Boss and some of the others out there that I've heard of other smaller manufacturers use. So we have been an early adopter of technology in that case and continue to adopt that to try to automate some of the business side of things, order entry and kind of using cloud computing to read customer PDFs and get those orders entered automatically into our system. It's always hard to convince them that it's going to work. I think that's probably the toughest thing is, the computer will be able to do this. Once it is adopted, the acceptance is very quick and very quick to complain when it breaks. Oh, this was super beneficial and now it's not working just the way it was before, either through changes as different web services update how they do things, and we got to tweak things on our end to make sure that we're keeping up with them and able to read the data that they're sending back. As far as like acceptance of advanced technologies on the shop floor, it's definitely much slower, but I think the slow adoption is what has kept them in business. You see a lot of companies out there. There's a lot of companies that just spring up out of nowhere, buy a bunch of equipment, attempt something, and then 2 days later they're on an auction website selling all their equipment because whatever it was that they were attempting to do either fell through, didn't work out, or that kind of thing. I still try to push automation as much as possible, but maybe not full scale, more of introducing, let's start using pneumatic devices. It makes it easier on the guys, it makes it more consistent and that kind of stuff. And as we slowly move into automation, it'll be easier to adopt because we've done kind of some of those small little things that you got to get in place ahead of time. That can make automation a little easier.
Now, especially when you're bringing in automation, what are you doing to really prevent that overwhelm with not only the resources that you have, but with the workforce so that you get that buy-in to the new things that you're bringing in?
Sure. One thing is trying to convince people that the idea is to make the job easier. And the other thing to also keep in mind, I would say another big thing to keep in mind about automation is sometimes they have the conception around here, it's going to make the job go faster. I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to make the job go faster. I don't know if any automation really increases productivity than having somebody stand there. The benefit comes from, it's going to work the 15 minutes that guy's going to take his break. It's going to work the 30 minutes for lunch. It's going to work. And then the various breaks throughout the day. That's hopefully where we'll catch up. We might not necessarily shorten the cycle time and stuff like that, but taking the understanding that it might not solve everything that we're looking for, or it's not going to, it will increase productivity in a different way. A lot of times we look at like cycle time. Did it shorten cycle time? It didn't shorten cycle time, but the job is more consistent. It's being done at a consistent pace without breaks, without stops and things like that. It'll upskill our workers because now they can, the tedious task of tending a machine or running a machine might be aided in automation. Now the worker can use more quality, or his focus will be more on quality, making sure parts are correct, making sure that everything's running efficiently, that the job is producing the same part every single time. So it just shifts its focus a little bit more. I see benefit to that. I think they see it, again, as you slowly introduce the small automation things, even if it's as simple as a pneumatic vise, all of a sudden parts might not be thrown out all the time. Why? Because we're getting consistent clamping force on the vise every single time. And if the part does fall out, usually it's either because an O-ring or air is not flowing to it right, or there might be other problems. So I'm not going to say it solves everything, but that consistency is there. And you're offloading some of that harebrained work that can be repetitive and monotonous onto automation, which I think benefits the employee most of all. Trying to convince them of that can be somewhat challenging, but I think once they start doing it and utilizing, can we put a pneumatic vise in here? They start seeing the benefit of it. Guys always pride themselves in the feel of torquing down a vise. They have the feel for it, which is good. That's something to be proud of, but the automation will make it so that we can shift some of that focus maybe to something else, quality, whatever it may be.
Besides thinking that there'll be an immediate increase in productivity, are there some common misperceptions that you've run into, in automating a small shop like yours?
I would say whether the adoption can be done and whether we can do it internally, I don't want to discount having somebody come in and turnkey something, which there's definitely benefits to that. And a lot of universities out there, if you have a project that you're able to share with them, you might be able to reach out to them. So I would say gathering the intelligence on a subject that we're not very well versed in helps a lot with easing that tension of it might just be too much. And nobody wants to go spend $70,000, $100,000 on a robot arm, for example, and have made a mistake. So trying to demonstrate the fact that if it doesn't work out or it doesn't go away, these are other areas that we might be able to utilize it. I would say trying to ease those concerns as well, to say, we know if we buy a ProtoTrack or an Akuma or a machine, a Mazak, whatever it may be, we're in the machining business. So we know that even if the job that we're maybe specifically buying a piece of equipment for, we're going to be able to find something else. A lot of times I think when people look at automation equipment, they only see that one project that they're trying to work on to get it to work. And it's, oh, there is other areas that you maybe not as conducive, but we could start utilizing it in this manner, whether it's maybe for deburring or something like that. Once you get the eyes open to go, oh, yeah, we could. So there is something else we could use it for if it doesn't work out. Trying to, that return on investment, right? That's what everybody's looking for. And maybe I wouldn't discount the failure as not a return on your investment to go, oh, that's the way to not do that.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can make it out the other end okay. But sometimes you fail quickly I can't remember where I heard it, but it's something that I always keep in the back of my mind. Analysis paralysis, sitting there thinking whether it's going to work. Sometimes you just got to try it. And so those are some of the things that I think are challenging, but try to work through that.
Let's talk about the supply chain and some of the things that have gone with that. We've had all kinds of global disruptions, the pandemic, geopolitical tensions. So how are you seeing that reshaping some of the supply chain management strategies?
Yeah, really, I think some of the things that have recently, COVID's probably was like the big thing that, brought supply chain to the forefront. Not that people aren't always thinking about it, but not that it's died off either over time. But I think it's leveled out to a point where material suppliers and other companies that are in the beginning of processes supplying that kind of thing, raw materials, if you will, have leveled out. We don't have much trouble getting material in and things like that. Maybe some of the unique ones. I would say probably the hardest thing for us right now is a lot of the smaller shops that we would work with. Being what I would consider in the Rust Belt of Ohio, we worked with a lot of other smaller shops who had that niche thing that they were doing that we worked with. And I've started to notice as baby boomers get older in some of these smaller shops and the next generation, such as mine, are not around to keep things going, they're closing up shop, and you're losing a lot of that knowledge that was gained over time. And I think, humble opinion here a little bit, that's probably the next rude awakening for the supply chain, is some of this knowledge that will be lost. My grandfather, my dad were part of that industrial revolution, if you will, after World War II, where kind of manufacturing just took off. All these things are being learned, all these things are being done, tribal knowledge is being built at that time. And now we're at a point where that's changing and some of that knowledge is leaving and potentially not being retained.
Right.
It's hard we've gotten into jig grinding more just because nobody around here doing it that we were able to easily find. And a couple of the shops that were smaller with guys that were running the equipment, baby boomers, if you will, that you could trust to do the job are closing up shop. And it's okay. It's either time for us to figure that out. We attempted to find somebody and we're having trouble. And then finding somebody that you can trust too is even more difficult from there. Some of these companies, I think, are going to get gobbled up. Smaller companies are either going to get gobbled up by a larger company, either through selling off either their customer base or maybe their tribal knowledge a little bit. But larger companies might not be interested in that. They might just be interested in who your customers are. And we're going to lose that little bit that was there that they knew that doesn't get passed on. So it's been my goal a little bit to try to capture as much of that from my family now too, because I see it potentially leaving as well. So how do you capture that? Hopefully On Track helps us do that, but we'll see. We do as much as we can.
Well, and it's always an interesting conversation because I know when I work with my customers and audiences, on one hand, you have your boomers, afraid that, oh, you're just doing that because you want somebody younger to take my job. And it's having that conversation of, no, this is about your legacy. We know that one day you will be physically incapable for whatever reason of doing the work anymore. And we want to make sure that the good work that you've been doing here for 20, 30, 40 years is going to carry on. So sometimes it's just how you're approaching it. And it's such a good idea that you are talking to your dad and grandfather to get that information, to leave that legacy with you and future generations. For people that are struggling with that, how are you doing that conversation? The fact that you're related to them, I realize that makes it a little bit easier. But if you
Yeah.
have somebody that's
I
been,
don't know about that.
yeah, that's true. It could make it harder too. But what does that conversation look like so that you can capture some of that knowledge?
Yeah, I would say it's beneficial to me that they've all been very open of sharing. So I wouldn't say I've had much resistance in that. Really, the area that I find that it's hard to convince are the shop floor guys. Creating the process sheets, capturing the information. I know it's in your head and I know you're going to remember it for the next time, but the day you're sick and I got to figure out what we did or how to go backwards or how to adjust something, even if it's something we're running all the time, that's where the adoption I think is the hardest, and trying to create a culture of teamwork. I always say we're family oriented, meaning I want to run one shift. I want you to go home. I want you to be with your family. I want you to have a life and stuff like that. Before we add shifts, we'll solve that problem other ways, either through automation or more equipment. But trying to develop a culture where of longevity, even for them going, hey, it's not, again, I'm not trying to take your job or things like that. We're trying to create longevity here for you. Anybody that there's some guys in here that are recommending people to come in and work and stuff like that. So hopefully they get that culture where we're all working together and trying to capture it. I think that's probably where it's the hardest. Again, it's hard to manage too, even because there's 6 family members, but there's roughly 22 guys out on the shop floor that I have to adopt into culture. Family can be resistant to change, but they're more open to it. Whereas on the shop floor, the guys are somewhat not always open to spending the time to try to capture that information. So selling them on the idea of how important it is, it's important for quality, longevity, and that kind of thing, I think is key to go, okay, yeah, this is why we're doing it. We're not looking to replace any, we're looking to try to keep going, if you will.
As far as your workplace culture and building those relationships, again, with a largely family run business, to connecting with those 22 workers on the shop floor, how are you, what are you doing in your workplace culture that's working in connecting with those people?
Yeah, I would say open door policy always. You can go ask anybody any question. No question is a dumb question. I have a lot of dumb questions if you're really gonna get down to the nitty gritty. I think that first and foremost, that is the most important. Next is who can do what, and making sure that you don't put somebody in a situation where they're going to struggle, because nobody. While we all like a challenge, everybody likes doing a puzzle, right? I don't want to sit there and drown either. So being mindful of everybody's capabilities and who can do what. And my dad always said there's a place for everybody, really. We don't make a habit of hiring people and then letting them go a year or two later. Our intention is longevity. Some of the guys have been here for 20 plus years, maybe 30. I have to go back and look, to be completely honest. But so we don't make a habit of trying to create turnover. Always sharing with them, paying your guys so they can't afford to leave is another way to take a look at it. Nobody's more important than anybody else would be complementary to that. If you go into it with that mindset, I think you'll find success because people will want to stay around. They're not going to go look for that job that pays them $1 more because they want to go over there. Trying to hold on to that. And I think that goes a long way into contributing to our success, as long as we can capture that tribal knowledge, because someday they're going to retire on the shop floor, even too, not just family, but I'm also referring to guys on the shop floor, and you don't want to lose that either. So that's important.
So you talked about the open door policy of people being able to share their knowledge. Are there other things that you're doing so that you're encouraging those people on the floor that, hey, they see something, hey, we can tweak this and make more money, we can do this and save more money. You're getting that buy-in and how are you giving them ownership in what they are doing? So you're getting buy-in.
Yeah, they're in charge of their process. They set up a job, they create it, they own it, you know. Somewhat too is standing back too and trying not to make too many suggestions because sometimes you got to start relying. You don't want to micromanage somebody, I guess
Right.
is probably the best way to get somebody to buy in because they'll feel like they have some sort of ownership over it. And then feedback is important too. Like I said, we've developed On Track within the last 5 years, it might be more. We've started to really digitize everything. So digitizing process sheets and things like that and getting feedback from them. Hey, do you like how the app is functioning? What do we need to change? What's something you want to see? I do a lot of that with my family as far as the management of it. How are you wanting to look at jobs? What more information can I put? What else do you want to see on a piece of paper when you're handed a job router? What's important? How do you want things highlighted? I think really helps a lot because they can see those changes immediately because I can go in and change the way the process sheet process is done or looks or how it works or adding the ability to do something else, whether that's inspection or something like that. I think also gives them ownership because it's not necessarily something that is directly related to running a piece of equipment that they're giving input to. So On Track in and of itself, hopefully will continue to help us maintain ISO compliance and stuff like that. So their feedback is important because I want them to use the tool. And if they feel like, it's like any app. If you're using an app and you don't like it, you're going to stop using it. We don't want that. And so if they have any feedback on it, and let me know. Open door policy goes a long way. And that goes for anything. I use On Track as an example, but whether it's the way you're doing a job, the way you're cutting something, figuring something out. Oh, hey, I found if I cut this particular material that way, I get longevity out of the tool or whatever it may be. Not only capturing that in that particular job, but then starting to share that with others and trying to find ways to, well, how do we retain that for future or the next job that uses something similar material, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, what are some of the other future trends? Excuse me. What are some of the future trends that you see emerging in manufacturers? We talked about baby boomer generation retiring, but how are you seeing that future generations or this generational shift is going to really move the industry forward?
Yeah, I think small shops like us are going to have to start figuring out ways to work up the bill of material. And it's going to be even harder now that some of the smaller other niche places, the guy that's painting, the guy that's doing this, are going out, figuring out how to navigate that, either through manageable growth, partnering with other companies. But I really think you're going to start to see the smaller baby boomer family owned business that was maybe only 5 to 10 guys that dwindled down over the years and went out are either going to be bought up by larger companies in which we're going to have to compete with the company that will paint, that will assemble, that will plate and do testing and all that kind of other stuff and kind of navigating what's going to be our approach to make sure that we're being competitive. Maybe it's becoming cooperative and starting to go, hey, working with them as a service. I always like cooperative money over competitive money. That's what made small businesses great because it was cooperative. The guy that painted, he did painting. The guy that machined, he did machining. The guy that grinded, he did grinded. And we all worked together to service that larger customer that was building planes, building cars, whatever it may be. So I think that will be the challenge of the future. It's going to be more of a challenge for those larger OEMs looking for competitive pricing because the market will consolidate is probably the best way to put it. I'm trying to think of the best term to use, but so trying to maintain a competitive edge during that consolidation, I think will be the next challenge and metamorphosis, if you will. I don't know the best way to put it, but change that's coming.
So we covered a lot of ground today. And so when you think about your business and what's helped you the most, what would be some of your best tips to help our listeners who are running into the same struggles and issues that you're dealing with that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, I keep saying to you, it's not my business. It's my family's business and everybody here is involved in a team atmosphere. I always use the word team because you have a family at home. I know everybody's family is a little different, but I think that can maybe bring the wrong culture to the shop. It's a team. You don't have to get along with your teammates, and you don't have to be around them. Sometimes you have to be around family. But I think team environment is the best way to look at a business. We are a family business, but try to look at it more from that angle as opposed to family, because you don't know, you're going to bring all different types of personalities, and people are going to butt heads, and trying to navigate that is probably the toughest challenge for any business owner. Is how do I, or even coach, whoever it may be, how do I get this large group of people that come from all different areas and get them to work together? And I think if you start from the point of view of team, that maybe that's a good vantage point, if you will, and just work from there.
And that just had me think of one more question when it comes to, you know what, every once in a while you probably make a bad hire with somebody who is not a good fit or is toxic, but maybe they're really good at what they do. So what do you do with that? Because you're weighing I need to get the job out. It's good, but on the other hand, they're driving that team mentality out. So have some examples of how you've handled that in the past.
Yeah, like I said, you got to be able to learn what everybody's skills are and where everybody fits in the puzzle piece. You're not always going to get along with your teammates, but like in any team, there's ways to put people in a situation where they in and of themselves can be successful without butting heads with those that they might. So like I said, being able to get a good idea of who the person is, where they're going to work out, and how best to utilize them is important. Some people are good just working independently and by themselves. You get them with somebody, they either, like you said, that toxic personality might start rubbing off on everybody and make everybody mad. So being able to identify the type of person that you're bringing in and how best to utilize them, I think goes a long way. And then just trying to the understanding of, as a team, that we all don't have to get along, and it's easy to avoid people in the shop for the most part and interact with somebody on a very limited scale if you have to. Again, there's always bad, and I'll be honest, most of them don't. If they do come here, the few that we had, they don't last that long. And usually the bad apples are the ones that aren't showing up on time and things like that. So they some of them almost go away on their own, just because I don't know if that's the team atmosphere of it going. You start seeing high output from people around you, and you either become intimidated by that, maybe good or bad. I don't know. But we've been fortunate that some of the ones who it's like, I don't know if this guy's going to work out, doesn't have to drive or whatever it may be, that they come to that realization. But always positive. I can't think of a time in the last 11 plus years that I've been working here full time that we've had somebody leave upset, come in and say, hey, it's just not what I thought it was. And most of the time it's just the production. And that's where I think automation will help us in the future. So I know I got off on a tangent a little bit there, but hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, it did. As we get to the end of our time together, if somebody did want to continue the conversation with you or learn more about what KK Tool Company does, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, www.kktool.net, N-E-T, is our website. They can call the shop, ask for John Kevin, and I'd be happy to chat with them. I'm no expert by any means, but I'm always willing to learn. And usually people asking you questions is a good way to learn. kktool.net is the best way to find us.
John, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I really appreciate your being here.
Thanks for having me, Lisa. It was a great time.
I'm Lisa Ryan, and this is the Manufacturers Network Podcast. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Manufacturers Network Podcast. Do me a favor and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues so we can grow this network and connect more fantastic folks just like you. You can either send your buddies to the website at manufacturers-network.com or share the Manufacturers Network podcast on your LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or wherever you and your industry friends hang out. The bigger and faster we grow the network, the stronger and deeper the community we'll all have. Thanks again, and I appreciate you.